Why state representative? How did you get there?
I was interested in trying to think about how do we change the conditions of our communities. So when I went to the State House and began working with members, I was like, wow, everything that we do has a direct impact on people. Any and every community across Ohio has lead service lines. We're like number 3 in the country when it comes to lead service lines, and still operative.
Interesting. I did not know that we are number 3 out of 700.
And that is not a stat that I want to be proud of. I'm not proud of the fact that Ohio's number 3 in the country when it comes to lead service lines, still operating, where families are still drinking tap water from. That is not a good sign.
Welcome to another episode of Innovation Somalia. I am your host, Abdul Ali. I'm coming to you from Columbus, Ohio. I'm really excited. Today is a special guest, Representative Dontavius Jarrells, District 1 here in Columbus, Ohio, Assistant Minority Leader.
Great to see you, Abdul.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Of course. Happy to.
I appreciate it. Let's start from way back.
Yeah.
Why state representative? How did you get there to begin?
Well, Abdul, it was a long story, so I'm keep it short.
Right.
So born and raised in Cleveland. Every day I walked out of my house, I saw what this investment looked like in real time. And I said to myself, there has to be a better way. And I wanted to be Oprah. Okay. Growing up, because she was always really inquisitive and asking the right questions that opened up the gates of the soul. And I was like, man, I want to do that. And so I was a kid that always asked questions. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what systems were or systemic policy was. But I was interested in trying to think about how do we change the conditions of our communities. And so when I finally got a really understanding of systems and state policy. And I was like, oh, I want to do something like that. And so I went to Hiram College, where I majored in political science economics. And when it was time for me to graduate and think about what my post-secondary opportunities were, one of them that came to me was the Legislative Service Commission Fellowship, also known as LSC. And LSC, just to kind of give you a backdrop for folks who are listening, is the nonpartisan body that helps draft our legislation in the state. And so this program, they select 24 students out the state of Ohio to come work in the State House for about 13 months. Mm-hmm. And I was selected. And at first, I didn't know, to be quite frank with you, I'd never been to the State House before that moment of my life. And so I knew about state policy, I knew about the state government, but I just never got involved because that just wasn't something that was really taught to us, right, in Cleveland particularly. So when I went to the State House and began working with members, I was like, wow, everything that we do in this body has a direct impact on people. And I said to myself, at some point in my life, I would love to come back and be of the people, to work for the people in this capacity as a state representative or state senator or whatever God gives me. And I was very fortunate to have run twice. Ran in 2016, where I lost by 1,500 votes, and where I won in 2020 during COVID amidst a number of candidates running for this position. And so that's how I got there. I really started my training, if you will, in policy, working in the State House, and then from there leaving and working with different policy jobs all across the city and the state and the county, and just kind of created the profile that I needed to be the best representative I can be for my people. Mm-hmm.
I saw something that you were one of the last folks to apply that program.
So basically, I did not know what the LSC fellowship was, and I was doing research, trying to figure it out. Like, can I move to Columbus? I've never been to Columbus before, because I've literally never been. And I applied. It was like a week left in the application process, and I didn't know. I was like, "This is a Hail Mary. Let me throw it out," and literally.
It worked out well.
It worked out well. Yeah. And my life was forever changed because of that program. And I work really, really hard now to make sure that we have minority representation in that fellowship, because it does indeed change your life if you get selected.
Yeah.
I truly do believe that.
It's a life-changing in steps for you to kind of get involved in politics, for sure, right? Yeah. So let's stay there a little bit on early time of your time, right? So I saw something where I think you were in testifying that about lead. Mm-hmm. I believe that
I was lead poisoning survivor. Yep.
So let's talk about that a little bit, where you were speech therapy all the way to year 5.
Yeah.
Fifth grade. So how was that like?
Well, it was It was something. Lead poisoning is an issue that so many families do not know about, because lead poisoning is not like you see a sore on your hand or you get cut or a broken arm. Like, this is poison that's like kind of literally in your body that you can't get out. And it impacts your brain development, impacts your cognitive abilities, impacts your cardiovascular issues. And for little babies and young people who get it, it can have a demonstrative effect on their abilities to speak, abilities to learn, and abilities to have clear thinking. And for me, I'm glad my mom caught it early, and I was able to go through their various treatments to get that lead out of my system, or at least as much as it could come out of my system. And then I had the opportunity in elementary school to do speech therapy because I couldn't speak well. And I'll commend my speech pathologist, speech teacher, Mr. Palander, because I credit so much of my ability to communicate effectively to him and those early years of kind of going through consonants and vowels and reading books and kind of sounding things out, breaking things down into the syllables, and really just learning how to enunciate, right? And now I do that in real life every single day as a legislator. But it was because of my lead poisoning that I had to navigate that difficulty growing up. And I'm fortunate that while some have long-term impacts of lead poisoning on their body, on their cognitive abilities, I've been very fortunate to have not had some of those same declines. And so I fight every day to make sure our young people don't have to go through what I went through, because they shouldn't. And these kids should not be, as I like to say, canaries in the coal mine when poisoning, particularly lead poisoning, is prevalent in their community, in their home. And so the Lead Line Replacement Act is a personal bill of mine where we're trying to invest and really remove 750,000 lead service lines out of Ohio over the next 15 years. And when we do that, we know then that once and for all, lead is no longer in our communities because we did the work to get rid of it once and for all.
In District 1, let's talk about that a little bit and how that affects in your district and your constituents and that, right? How do you measure it, the number of folks that are actually being affected in that area?
So it's more of a macro level. So what I will say is any and every community across Ohio has lead service lines. 750,000, we're like number 3 in the country when it comes to lead service lines.
Wow.
And still operative. Like, that means that people, this building could literally have lead service line underneath it.
Exactly.
Right? And every single community navigates removing lead lines differently. So you have some communities that do what they call a lead line assessment, where they see and they can literally track where the lead lines are and then schedule replacements over time. Some communities that may be villages, townships, may not have that. And so they're learning that lead service lines exist when they're demolishing a building, when they're redeveloping a building, when they're doing brownfield excavation work, right? And they're like, whoa, lead is present here. We got to now address it, right? So every community is doing something different. And what my bill does, my Lead Line Replacement Act, would create a standardization across the state where every community has a clear tools to identify and replace lead service lines when they can over the next 15 years. And also work to make sure we have the money, because it costs about $4 to $5 billion to do this, the money to actually invest in the workforce and in the capacity to make sure we're moving these lead service lines. And I'll say this last piece: for every dollar that we invest in removing lead lines, we see between a $20 to $34 return on our investment, economic investment, back to those communities. And children and families aren't being poisoned, which there's no cost that you can put on a life of a family, on a child. And so this is a really big deal for me. It comes from a personal space. I get emotional thinking about it because I can tell you I've spoken with mothers who have seen their children have severe cognitive disadvantages and disabilities simply because of the poison that was entering their body and they didn't know it.
Why is it not so hard to be proactive rather than reactive?
I think what I'll tell you is families don't know about lead poisoning. That is the truth.
No, I'm talking about the statewide.
Oh, proactive in terms of state policy.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you. We have H2 Ohio. We have money set aside to address this. And the Governor DeWine, I have to give him some credit, and our legislature some credit. We are tackling this, but we're tackling it in a piecemeal way, right? We're putting money in a pot of funds. Cities and municipalities get grants. They apply for those funds. Those funds go back out to the community, and it's very small dollars. Like, in order to truly address this issue, it's going to cost billions of dollars. Yeah. And when you're putting only $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, $10 million behind this issue, where it's only a scrape in the bucket of what we really have to invest to remove this lead out of Ohio once and for all.
Interesting. I did not know that we are number 3 out of 700. Yeah.
Well, we're number 3 out the country.
Out the country, yeah.
And Cleveland, where I'm from, is number 1 in the country for lead.
Yeah.
Lead service lines. It's wild, right? And that is not a stat that I want to be proud of. I'm not proud of the fact that Ohio's number 3 in the country when it comes to lead service lines still operating, where families are still drinking tap water from. That is not a good sign.
Long way to go.
Long way to go.
Long way to go. There's a lot going on your plate, looks like it. From, I see you very well involved within the community. I see you doing a lot of different things. I keep tracking you sometimes on Facebook. Let's talk about some of the things that are actually that you feel more passionate about that maybe is in the pipeline. Of course. That you kind of sort of yet to come, or maybe the ones that you already, like the lead boys and thing that you're very proud of it. What are the other things you're working on?
Well, what I'll tell you, and Abdul, I know you had other state legislators on this podcast, and so I probably won't have to go deep into like what we do on a day-to-day basis as a state legislator. But what I'll tell you for folks who are watching and listening, the 3 buckets of my work kind of go like this. First, I'm just a bill sitting on Capitol Hill, and I'm just trying to pass a bill. So legislative priorities. I was very fortunate this GA to introduce well over 16 bills, 6 of which got into law this GA. I'm pretty proud of that, and one of the few Democrats who have a number of bills that passed this GA in a Republican majority. So I'm very honored about that. The second bucket is funding, right? Money. So we have 2 pots of funds. We have the operating budget, and we have the capital budget. And I'm very proud to know that, and to say to folks that we brought millions of dollars back to District 1, right? I represent all of downtown. I represent all of Bexley, Berwick, King Lincoln. I represent all of Milo Grogan, where the airport is. I used to represent German Village before redistricting. I still represent it until January 1st, which then after that, I would then represent all of Wyland Park, right? And a little bit of Italian Village. I currently represent all the South Side, but I'll be sharing that after January 1st, or on January 1st with Representative Humphrey, where we'll share the South Side together. And so my district is very, that's my ace, right? That's my twin, in our legislative world, because we do a lot of work together, and we're good at what we do. We're good at what we do.
She said that as well.
Yeah, we are. and what I will say is my district is very diverse. And so bringing funds back to the district has to be important, right? I not only represent businesses, I represent families. And so it's that balance of making sure that businesses prosper and families are thriving, right? So that's the second bucket. And then the third bucket is my constituent supports. Most of the time when people are coming to my office, they have exhausted every other option. And oftentimes they say, you're my Hail Mary, right? You're the person who may very well be the difference between whether I eat today or I don't, whether I have my unemployment help support it or get it or not, whether I get my SNAP benefits or I don't. Our office oftentimes receive very complex cases. And I'm proud to say that my office regularly supports families and helps get them to a solution where their lives are better, their families are better, because simply calling my office and saying I need help. And so on a kind of a broad brush of what I do, those are the 3 buckets. And so my initiatives really kind of are centered on personal and economic empowerment for families. And what do I mean by that? Well, I know that when you're working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet, when you're living in a home that you cannot afford, when you're trying to get food that you can't purchase, right? The truth is these families are suffering. And not only are the families suffering, the community suffers. And so I'm big on raising the minimum wage. That's always going to be a bill that I introduce every GA. I'm big on addressing sub-minimum wage for folks with developmental disabilities. I would tell you there are individuals who have a physical disability like blindness, for example. They can make somewhere in the ballpark of minimum wage all the way down to $1 an hour under sub-minimum wage because they qualify for sub-minimum wage. A business is qualified to give them that much money or that little of money. Yeah. And so that's not right. And we got to have real conversations around people with developmental disabilities or physical disabilities deserve the same fairness in wages as everyone else, right? So those two big issues, addressing lead. I have a bill called the Foster to College Scholarship Act, where it is the first ever foster college scholarship for young people, where we are creating a platform for young people who are in probably some of the most difficult moments of their life. When they're graduating, when they're thinking about what their next step is, they're not doing it alone. That they're doing it with the support of the state saying that we see you, we want to invest in you, and hopefully you'll come back to Ohio or stay in Ohio and be a part of our workforce. And then the Pay Stub Protection Act, which is a bill that I was able to pass into law, House Bill 106.
What is it exactly?
Yeah, so Ohio was one of the few states, literally in the country, that did not require businesses to give pay stubs to workers.
Doesn't it come with your paycheck?
Yes, it's supposed to, but a business did not have to give it to you. So a business could say, they can just give you the money.
Yeah.
Without any record of what you're getting paid for, right? You worked 40 hours a week, you make $10 an hour, you're supposed to get $400, but yet you getting only $270.
Gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha. So basically, how you get to that net is just determining, like, okay, well, how if I make 400 minus the taxes, and how do I get to that net, that 275? I don't know how.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because if you don't get a pay stub, you don't get anything, right? There's
no. I understand.
And so what happens is folks who don't get their pay stubs, they have to sue the business in order to get them. But by my bill basically says that any business in Ohio that's operating in Ohio has to give a worker that they are paying a pay stub. Because here's the thing. Here's the why it matters. Because most folks be like, I didn't even know you can, I thought that's common practice. Yeah. Everything ain't common to everybody, okay? I wish it was, but no. There's some businesses do not give that until this bill is now about to be enacted into law, which I'm very proud of. Yeah. With a pay stub, oftentimes, this is how you qualify for additional services, right? SNAP benefits, WIC. Like you need to provide proof of employment. Right. Well, if you don't have a pay stub, if the business is unwilling to give you a pay stub, then you're also locked out of those benefits that you and your family very well need, right? And so for me, it's not just about the transparency or addressing wage theft, because those two things are real. It's about making sure that every family, when they need a hand up, they can have the necessary documents in place so that they can provide those documents and get the services that they need. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, now it's kind of clear, like you said, everybody thinks that's a common practice that everybody should be able to provide a pay stub in the event.
I agree. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So, you're getting a lot of bills passed. Oftentimes politics is difficult game, right? Mm-hmm. You get a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
What makes you so successful? How do you maneuver the roles?
I always say when you really boil down politics, it's all about relationships. Mm-hmm. And I have been very, so two things. One, I've been in this game since I was 22. When I first moved down to Columbus, I learned, I became president of Ohio Young Black Democrats. I was one of the founding members of New Leaders Council. I created African Council. I was a national chair of the Black Caucus, Young Democrats of America, young Democrat leader. Like I did it all. Like everything you can think of, I've been there, did it, worked it, built it, right, and was a part of it. And I learned along the way that everything boils down to relationships. And when I work with Republicans, because you have to, we're in the minority as a caucus. And for folks who are watching, and listening, the minority caucus simply means that we do not have enough votes in the House or in the Senate to pass a bill just with our numbers alone. And so we have to work with Republicans, and they have to vote on our bills in order for those bills to become law. And so in order for me to convince, work with, and support or get support from my colleagues on the other side, I have to have a relationship with them. And so I really work hard to invest in those relationships, right? And it doesn't mean that we agree on everything, because the truth is there are some members of the General Assembly, we may only agree on one thing, but that one thing is what we work on together, right? It's about finding commonality, not being afraid of the debate, right? Because I've had, when I was a freshman legislator, I was on the 11th floor. Mm-hmm. And the 11th floor at the time was a very hybrid floor. And so it was four Democratic offices around a sea of Republicans, legislators. And we'll have a hotly contested issue on the floor. We're done. I'm walking back to the Rife. I'm in my office, and here comes a Republican wanting to sit down and talk to me about that contentious issue. Mm-hmm. And so I learned, you can't be afraid of the smoke, right? You got to go in and be like, okay, well, you don't believe that gay people should have equal rights, or you don't believe that certain religions should be on the House floor, or you don't believe that, whatever, name a controversial topic, insert controversial topic. They're in my office having conversations about it. And for me, it's listen, we may not agree, and that's fine, but let's find commonality on what we can agree on. Right. And actually do what's best for our constituents collectively. Because here's the thing. Every time I pass a bill into law, it doesn't just impact my constituents. It impacts the millions of people that make up this state. And so my issues that's impacting my district, heck, it impacts your district too, right? Poor people are in every single district across Ohio, right? Everyone, right? There are people who are dealing with and struggling with addiction across every community in Ohio.
Mental health,
you name it.
Yep.
So why not work on the betterment of Ohioans, since we have the power to do so? But it takes building a genuine relationship where you may not agree on everything, but the things you can agree on, let's work together. Yeah. And I leveraged that as a freshman, as a sophomore, and now as going into my junior term in office to really build on those relationships.
Yeah. How long can you serve? As long as you get reelected, you good to go?
That's a great question, Abdul. So we all, both in the House and the Senate, we all get 8 years term limits. And so I am I've finished my 4th year, so my 2nd term in office, and I'm going into my 3rd. So I have 2 more terms, basically 2 more terms. So 4 years total left. And so I've been telling people I'm a junior now, right? Going into my junior term where I get to really, my freshman term was kind of, I learned the ropes because I worked in the State House before, but I learned how to navigate the relationships. My 2nd term, I was in leadership. I was working on bills, passed bills. I passed about over 13 bills so far over my tenure in the legislature. And so I've kind of hit a groove point. And now going to my junior term, we about to fly because the system is set up. And for folks, you are going to hear it first. I'm calling my legislative agenda a love letter to Ohio because, one, I love people. And one of the most powerful quotes that I say everywhere is from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he says, to serve, you only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. And for me, if you really love Ohio and love the people in it, the policies that we pass in this state have to show love in everything that we do. And so the things that I'm focused on are about changing the material conditions of people, because I know that is what Republicans want, Democrats want, independents want. They want to see their conditions, their communities for the better, look different, feel different, and their families know that they're supported by a state government. And so my love letter to Ohio is going to be this collection of bills that are really going to address the realities of people all across the state.
I lived here in Columbus about 27 years, and I have seen gradually how Columbus was, if you drive 25 miles, then you're somewhere near. the countryside of it or going outside the city, but now gradually it's becoming like a real city.
Yes, it is.
And for me, I feel like there's good leadership in hand in order for that to happen. I remember when Coleman was in the office, he did a lot of great things through Cleveland Avenue. I know is the one of the things that who initially started the lights. I think it was. Yeah. So there's a lot of great leaders that kind of kicking the can down the road for another person to kind of sort of pick it up. Now let's talk about the assisted minority.
Yeah. So I am one of 4. Currently members of the Democratic caucus that is in leadership. So you have the leader, the minority leader, who is Representative Allison Russo. Have myself, the assistant minority leader, that basically I am like the vice president, if you will, if you like akin to a vice president. So at the absence of the leader, I step up into the role as minority leader. The leader can, share and, ask me to do certain initiatives, do certain things, right? I am leading the caucus alongside our leader. And then we have a minority whip, who is Representative Dunny Isaacson. And then you have the assistant minority whip, which again serves that kind of same role where when the whip is not present, the assistant whip takes on the role. And that's Representative Michelle Grimm. And the 4 of us are elected by the Democratic body to lead the caucus and fight on behalf of the caucuses. So it's not just the day-to-day work that we're doing to pass bills and to support our constituents. We also are the political arm. And so we work on trying to get more Democrats elected, work to raise money, right? Work to support current members who are in tough cycles, or they're in a tough district, right? We call them those districts that are a district that we're trying to protect. And so we kind of balance both the administrative work as the legislative and leadership team, but also the political part of the job, which is making sure that we are growing in power, leveraging our power correctly, and then ultimately mobilizing our power for the betterment of Ohioans.
What are the main challenges that you guys face as a minority in the House?
We ain't got no power. I mean, that's it. Like that's it. I mean, we don't have like. I mean, I can go into detail, but it's like when you really boil down what the minority party is, that we don't have any power. Like we have. Let me rephrase that. We have power in our numbers because of the dynamics that oftentimes permeate politics, right? People don't like folks. People are in different pockets, sects, and different groups, and they sometimes conflict, right? We have power in numbers, but the day-to-day decisions of the House rests in the Speaker, right? And Speaker Stevens, who is the current Speaker of the current GA, he worked with Leader Russo, and we tried to do things on behalf of Ohioans that we're going to move things forward. And the hope is the next speaker will have that same relationship with. But the power rests in the speaker. He can call up votes, call up bills. We could pass a lot of progressive bills, but they may never get to the House floor because it is the speaker's power to bring certain bills up. And so I say that, what's the hardest thing is seeing your bills die. We all introduce amazing bills. Like some of us we all introduce amazing bills. I was going to say a lot of the bills are backed by community support and organizational support, but to work your bill and never see the fruit of that labor. There are bills, for example, the Pay Stub Protection Act. That bill was introduced about over 5 GAs, so 10 years to get that bill, the Pay Stub Protection Act, over the finish line. And just this GA, right, with me having to wheel and deal and leverage relationships and fight and crawl, I did everything, right, to get that bill passed. We finally got it passed, but it's not. So the ownership is not just on me, though. This bill has been introduced by many, many, many other members. Yeah. Right? It just never got to the finish line until this point. And so not having power has been, one of the hardest things because we have great ideas. that really could change the material conditions of people that never make it into law.
Right.
So
yeah, it's frustrating a bit.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it's frustrating. Of course, I would love to see something different, but it takes time. We all inherit a system, right? And then and we're not here forever, right? We're only here for 8 years, and so I always look at my role almost like like a chain, right? All of us are being linked onto the past, like what was. And the question at hand, at least for me as a legislator, is how strong of a link will I be that someone else is going to link to, right? Because I don't have a lot of time in the world to fix everything. I'm going to fix what I can fix, and I'm going to leave everything else to God. And I'm going to hope that those who come after me pick up the mantle, pick up the baton, and keep fighting for the good of people. And so that's all you can do.
I mean, that's the card that you've been dealt with. What was the last time the majority was a Democrat in the House?
That was, the Democrats won in 08 or 06, 08 under Obama. And so the House flipped, the Senate did not. And then they held power under Speaker Butish, and he held power from 09 and then 10. And then during the 2010 election, they lost the House. And then 2011, that's how we ended up back in the minority. So we held power as a majority for one term.
Yeah.
But before that, we had Vern Rife, right? So Vern Rife was the powerhouse Democrat.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be back in the day that you would kind of see a flip because Ohio was purple, right?
Yeah.
That we would, the winds change.
Yeah.
And at one point, the House was Republican or led majority Republican. Then it'll flip to majority Democrat. And it'll kind of go back and forth.
Yeah.
And then, with redistricting and the politicalization of that is, of course, kind of cemented some of the majority power that we're now seeing now. And so that's why issue 1 was such a big deal for us as Democrats to try to get past, because we believe that will be a way to level the playing field, to get politicians out of the process of drawing maps and ultimately put it in the hands of people, common people, everyday people, to hopefully build better maps that we all will subscribe to. And so, unfortunately, that didn't pass. But when you submit power like that in the redistricting process, you can literally carve out who wins those districts.
Yeah.
So,
and it will take time, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's going to take some time to fix, for sure.
It's going to take some time to fix. So how do you one of the citizen minority leader is just to kind of sort of help out Democrat to get elected, right? So
it's a both and. It's both campaign and the day-to-day administration of the Democratic caucus staff.
Okay. So how do you guys, or how do you think about it, like when you think about the Democrat in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you think about the pipeline?
The next generation.
Yeah, the next
leaders?
generation. Yeah. How do you think about that?
Well, listen, I can only talk about what we do here in Franklin County.
Okay.
Actually, I shouldn't say. I could have a little bit more broader perspective too. But I'll use the example of Franklin County. We have talent in this city. And talent in the county. It's really about cultivating that talent to place people in position. And to be quite frank with you, that's being done as we speak, right? There are people who are being primed to do things, run for things. Heck, there's people who are in elected leadership positions now who are being primed to run for things, right? And so what I think about it is I think it's incredibly important. I also think that it's important that we see young voices, young faces, young perspective, because I always tell young people they inherit the decisions that we make. And what better thing that we can do than to empower the young people to have a voice at the table for the very community, the very city, the very state that they're going to inherit, right? Nation. And so I think building a pipeline is incredibly important. It's how we maintain continuity in terms of because these jobs are hard. Like I'm gonna be honest, it's not an easy job.
No, it's not.
It's not an easy job, right? It's very policy heavy. You got to be a tactician. You can be bad at this job. You can be bad at this job, but it'll be at the expense of people, right? And so
there are some people that are really bad at it.
I ain't no comment. But like there are people who do not do well in this job, but yet they're elected. And my thing is, if we build a pipeline that's strong, we are ultimately pouring into those new leaders what it takes to actually do the job effectively, again, for the betterment of people. And that's not just Columbus or Franklin County or Central Ohio. That's every single community should be building that. And so I think as I think about kind of the Democratic Party at a macro level, we just got to continually hone in on how do we make sure that we have a big tent and that we're investing in the voices of tomorrow. Because if we don't do that, those voices will never have a seat at the table, and or they'll bring their own folding chair and then they'll be against you, right? And that's not what we want. We want community, right, of every perspective, every age, every identity at the table, because that's how we build real policy that impacts everybody.
Yeah, I want to touch on a little bit about election. Right?
Yeah, what's up?
It was an interesting election.
Oh yeah, it was.
It certainly did not go like as you would have hoped for it to be, right? So when you look on the micro, like here in Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio, why do you think that did not turn out the way it should have, or the way you would have hoped to have it?
What I would say is every member. I mean, we did well in Columbus. I mean, I can only speak about. Let me just talk about the state legislative races. And so we were able to flip a seat. So we gained 2 seats in the Ohio House. One of those seats was a person by the name of Mark Segrist, who will be representing all of Grove City. And as I mentioned to you, German Village, where I used to represent, right? Well, I'm still representing until January 1st. He will be taking over that part of the community, that part of Columbus. Okay. So that's a win, right? To flip a very purple district, right? Mark's background, Mark's portfolio, Mark's profile, as a former council member, right? He has all the ingredients to be an effective legislator for that area. And so I'm proud, damn proud actually. We were able to bring on Crystal Lett, which is another Franklin County member, right, to be a part of it. She ran for state senate and lost, and now she's won and coming over to the House. So in Franklin County, we did well to turn out the base to vote for our members. And we're going to see that reflected in the numbers that are going to be coming into the General Assembly come January 6th. But you have to look higher, right? So what we did see is people cross vote. So they would vote for the Democratic state rep, but they may have not voted. They may have voted for Bernie Moreno, or they may have voted for Trump, right? And so they were split ticketing, as they call it. And part of it, there's a lot of conspiracy theories as to what happened. I don't want to necessarily go deep into all this conspiracy theories, but I think there was a large number of misinformation, right, that got out. That what happened with, for example, Senator Sherrod Brown was devastating to me, right? He's one of the hardest working U.S. senators of our lifetime, and to have seen him lose, partly because of the amount of money that they put over him in negative ads, right, to create and disparage his reputation, it hurt, right? But that's also just the game. That is the game, right? Money, unfortunately, proliferates in our political reality now. And unless we begin to have real conversation around campaign finance reform, this is the game. And so part of what we have to do as a democratic ecosystem universe, in my honest opinion, is really reframe how we play the game, right? And what does that look like? And that could look like a lot of things. I'll give you one, right? One of the things that I'm really passionate about, and I shared this with many members of the national community, national DNC Grove folks, when I was in Washington for the DNC, is we need to really refocus and reframe how we communicate our message, right? We need to go where the young people are, Snapchat, TikTok. We need to really be intentional about bringing in those micro influencers to set up like real conversations with young people where they're on looking at the 24-hour. I think about Kenai Savet, whatever his name is, I can't remember his name, but he does the live streams for 24 hours.
Yeah, Snitch or something. At the
end. We should be doing that for like bringing in young electeds and people from every single walk of life, talk about policies, educating young people, educating people, right? I just think like our model of engagement, particularly on the social media space, is antiquated.
But what if you don't have, I mean, like you said, Sherrod Brown was one of the hard-working senators. He's been there for quite a bit some time, but he's been there quite a bit some time. Now, if there was somebody else, like, you're talking about going to all these in target market that, that could potentially flip the seat, these young minds, right? So, but why not have a young mind kind of sort of behind the face?
Well, what I would say is there were young people behind this campaign. It was powered by young people. I think he didn't lose because young people voted for Trump or young people voted for Bernie Moreno. Yeah. I think it was the sheer amount of money that was placed in negative ads against him. It was overwhelming. I mean, it was one of the most expensive races of our lifetime in Ohio, right? And so the truth of the matter is money influences elections. And until we get money out of politics and really be intentional about real investment and real talking to people about facts, right? People can run an ad to say I'm a blue person, right? And if you have enough money,
you can make you believe it.
People will be like, you are blue. Yeah. I'm like, well, whoa, hold up. I feel very brown skinned, right? And so it's like, so the truth is money can impact people's perceptions. Yeah. And when you're getting it from every time you open up your iPhone, every time you turn on your TV, every time you open up your computer, every time you looking at your tablet, it's a negative ad about somebody that you once voted for. You begin to question your own sanity, right? And so we have to figure out a way to combat that. It also may mean money, right, on our end. But it also means, how do we re-engage some of these populations that have turned to these social media spaces, and that's where they're getting their news. Yeah. They're not getting it from CNN or MSNBC or Fox. They're getting it from TikTok. Yeah. And so we got to meet them where they are and be really intentional about that. Not just, we're going to throw some money here and there, but like have a whole strategy around engagement, because folks are getting their news from these new places. They do not believe in news, the traditional news sources anymore. Yeah. And that's something that we got to combat and really figure out how to reframe.
Yeah. What about the macro level, the presidential level? Ohio used to be on a flip state. It completely went to red now, right? I mean, would you say that?
What I would say,
is a red state now?
Well, I wouldn't. I would say Ohio's a gerrymandered state. Okay. It's not a red state. I think that it's becoming redder. I would say that. What we're seeing is a number of things. Mm-hmm. One, you're seeing a lot of people move out of Ohio for other opportunities, which is something that I want to stop. I want to be able to provide prosperity opportunities here in the state.
But also a lot of people are moving in Ohio.
People are moving in.
Which is a housing issue too.
That's correct. Yeah. And so, but part of it is Ohio's becoming an older state, right? And so, so what happens is the educational disparity is beginning to really take shape in the state. So people who are highly educated, they typically vote Democrat. Mm-hmm. Folks who are not, I won't say not as educated, it's not the right term, but maybe for one reason or another, they're pursuing something else, right? They went through a trade, or they're in a union, or they're doing something, right? Most of them, it depends, right? Some union workers vote Republican, some vote Democrat. Some who only have a high school diploma, some of them vote Democrat, some of them vote Republican. Yeah. But what we're seeing is a lot of educated people are leaving the state, right? And as you get older, which I want to say, when people begin to have these, differences of opinion about what a party is, like the Democratic Party or the brand of the Democratic Party versus the brand of the Republican Party, when we get locked into these very contentious debates about policies that may not be impacting them and their lived experience, most times people tune out. And what they're seeing on their phones, on their tablets, on their social media apps, that becomes their reality. Yeah. And then they are going to vote accordingly.
Because it doesn't really impact them on their day-to-day stuff. So basically, whoever has their ears last is whoever
going to win.
Yeah.
Right. And so part of that's why at the macro level, right? And I also think that just, there was a lot of misinformation around Vice President Harris.
Yeah.
Lots of misinformation. And, and people believed it, unfortunately. But I also, I'll be honest, right? Race played a role, right? So what I would say is it's complicated. It's a complex. Politics is a complex web because at least the people that I've talked to as I engage through my campaign, they're emotional voters, right? They're emotional. They're not everybody's a logical voter. It's emotional. Like who do I feel?
Because they get impacted on the policies that are happening like on their day-to-day life.
Correct. So if my groceries are high, if my gas is high, when I feel like there's a squeeze happening on my family life, I'm looking at the people in charge and saying, what the hell are you doing? Yeah. Right? And it just so happened that, listen, COVID changed everything.
Yeah, big time.
Changed everything. And we got to remember that it was under Trump's administration that we had COVID.
Yeah.
And then Biden got in office.
Yeah.
And we were we were devastated economically.
Yeah.
And they had to generate money. They have to
print money,
in order to help families deal with the strife that these communities were facing. And that's what they did. But we all know economics, right? As an economics major, when you print money, you cause inflation. Like something's going to go up, right? There's a cause and there's an effect. Yeah. And so the truth of the matter is, I think Biden was one of the most consequential presidents of our lifetime. I really do believe that. With the Build Back Better plan, with the infrastructure deal, with all the things he was able to do to really stabilize this nation post-COVID, when the world was burning, when families were dying, whole families being wiped off the face of the earth, right? He was able to figure out how to stabilize our country and not lead us to a depression. Think about that. And out of that, right, people's food prices went up. Gas did go up. Right. And that's what people were thinking about. That was on their immediate top of mind. Yeah. And politics sometimes is not about the long term. It's about short in the moment. If I sat in a room and explained the Build Back Better plan to families and the infrastructure deal and how it impacted them directly, and I had an hour, 2 hours to do it, to show them the kind of the plotted points of history here and how over the sequence of this man's tenure as a president, our lives have been saved because of him, I may be able to convince some people to vote. But I don't have that much time. You get 30 seconds to share a soundbite that could very well change a heart and, create an emotional connection and then ultimately spur somebody to action to vote. That's not enough time. And we, unfortunately, are not winning in the soundbite war. Yeah, that's just the truth.
No,
we're not. So that is the thing that I want to see us really change and really focus on, because we got to meet our constituents where they're at. Yeah, and where they're at is where they're at. And so how do we really, and this is just these are, we have a chair's race happening now with the DNC or Democratic National Committee. We have vice chair races happening. These are the conversations we need to be having at that level to say, how do we begin to evolve our brand of our party to really meet the needs of people's day-to-day lived experience, but also tell the story of what we've been able to do, because Biden saved this country. And I will argue somebody down every day plus on Sunday about that, because my mom almost died from COVID. She almost died from COVID. And I understand what families were dealing with, because I was talking with doctors about, whether or not she's going to make it. Yeah. And I think that so for me to have my mom, but also see the work that went into trying to recover it in this country, and be somewhat in the space of conversation as an elected, I saw things. I was like, wow, like we were able to pull this off and stave off devastation for our entire nation. And I'm proud of the administration, of Biden administration and Vice President Harris for what they were able to do.
Yeah, a lot of people was not as fortunate as you were when it comes to their parents.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
Very lucky.
Very lucky. Very lucky. I remember those are tough times, man. Tough times. Yeah.
Some people don't even want to go back to those times. Some people are like, some people don't even remember what COVID was like. People are like, you know what? That's just, get it out my brain. It's not real anymore. Right? I was like, no, COVID slaughtered families. Like, it was like horrific. And we had to come out of that with the fears, the uncertainty economically. And Biden had to have a plan. And he did.
Yeah.
Our nation, even while we're going through what we're going through from an inflationary perspective, our nation is better because of the decisions that we had to be made in the early parts of his tenure when we were battling against COVID.
I remember driving into west side of Columbus, Sullivan and Georgesville area, and that was a ghost town. It just changed, like, in a, from image perspective. I'm like, wow, this place about a year ago, there was a lot of people, there's businesses that were open and flourishing. Now it's just a ghost town. There's nobody on this road. so it's kind of weird, man. So how did your mom, how did she went through? Tell us a little bit about that. Was she hospitalized?
Yeah, she was. Okay. Absolutely. And by the grace of God that, she was not intubated.
Okay.
They were able to find the right combinations of medicine to give her. I'll never forget. I called, and she probably won't want to tell the story, but whatever, it's fine. I remember talking to her doctor. I was like, "Give her whatever you gave Trump." I was like, "Whatever you gave Trump, I want to give. Like, I don't care. Like, save my mama." Right? I was mad because I was like, "I ain't gonna lose her." Right? So I was adamant on whatever. Because remember, we didn't have a vaccine then.
Yeah.
Right? We were still experimenting with stuff and trying to figure out. And listen, I commend the doctors. They did everything they could to save my mama, and they did. And so, what I will tell you is, that was a hard time for not just me, for a lot of people. And thank God that we are not there anymore.
Are you the only child?
I'm not. I am the. Interestingly enough, I have 8 siblings or 7 siblings, so I'm the 8th child. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Where you fit in?
So that's even more complicated. So I have my mother's side, 5 children. Okay. And then my father's side, 5 children. That's including me on both.
Okay.
So I'm the oldest of the men. On my mother's side, I have 3 other brothers and 1 sister. And on my biological father's side, I have 3 sisters and 1 brother. And so I have actually 8 siblings, not 7, 8 siblings.
Total of 9.
Sorry. And so I have a very fulfilling experience with both my families, and it's been a joy.
Are you the only politician?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. Oh yeah. I mean, it's not easy. I mean, this is not an easy road. Like I always tell people, they say, how do you do it? How do you get up every morning and are willing to put yourself out there like that? And I always kind of go back to this idea. Like, I remember, so in elementary school, in middle school, and in high school, if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to think about, elementary school, middle school, and high school, I did morning announcements. So I was the kid to say, "Good morning, everybody. This is Dontavius Jarrells. Welcome coming in for morning announcements." And I just remember, like every day having to do morning announcements about like school events happening or parties happening, or make sure people get their permission slips signed for the zoo or, whatever. And I just kind of grew a love out of that for connecting with people. Yeah. And so, when I got the opportunity to work in public policy work, I was like, man, or working in the State House, I was like, this is like my jam, right? This is my jam. I get to connect with people in a real sense, right? And communicate what I believe, right? And it's like, man, or at the time as an LSC fellow, communicate what my member believed, right? It was fulfilling. And And so I wake up every morning with that same kind of inspiration. Like, man, I get to literally fight on behalf of people who may not have a voice. And I kind of share that morning announcement analogy because it's like, I remember calling if I remember a story where somebody needed me to make an announcement because they lost their coat. Right. And I was like, now simple. Right? I'm just making a normal announcement. Yeah. Hey, if you found a blue coat, please pick it up. But, please send it to the principal's office. Right. But it's like, that's almost what I do today. Like, I get to call agencies on behalf of families to say, listen, this family was dropped. They didn't get their SNAP benefits. They didn't get their health care access. They didn't get their unemployment. They didn't get their HUD voucher. Right. Like, what the hell. Right. And so I get to kind of be the problem solver in a way, the Inspector Gadget, if you will. Inspector Gadget was my favorite cartoon. Like he had all the mechanics on him, and he always was able to solve was able to solve the problem by the end of the show. Yeah. And that was my jam. I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be Inspector Gadget. I want to be able to dissect, be a tactician, look at the field, play chess, not checkers, and ultimately communicate the win to families, because they need to know that I'm working on them. I gotta tell you,
you're a good communicator. I mean,
thank you.
I've seen quite a few videos, especially there was an ad that you were running with at the time, Nanwal.
Yes.
This guy's a good communicator.
Thank
this
you.
thing comes to second nature.
Thank you. It's a gift from God. I commend my grandfather. In Cleveland, they had the Kids Festival. Folks in Cleveland, they probably know about it. We had the air show, and we had a Kids Festival. A Kids Fair. It was always at the lakefront, it was at the Burkefront, kind of where the airplane hangars and all that stuff was. And I remember, and my grandfather, God rest his soul, he took me to the Kids Fair, and they had a teleprompter where a kid, I was like third grade, fourth grade at the time, and you can read like a newscaster, right? And I was reading like the importance of this rain issue happening, and we got to take shelter or something like that. And I vividly remember doing really well, and the newscaster at the time came to me and said, boy, you'll be good, and so I always kind of kept that with me, like, man, like that's why I did the broadcasting in elementary school and middle school, high school, because I was told that I could communicate effectively, and I was like, well, let me hone that skill, because it may be useful one day, right? And it's paid off.
It only takes one comment or one compliment to kind of sort of ignite your gift of God, right?
Absolutely.
So I remember Jay Leno was talking about, one of his early teachers said that, have you ever thought about, comedian or something? And that kind of sort of ignited,
that's it. Yeah. It's only takes one little spark.
One little spark.
Man, I'll never forget my grandfather when he would always play the video to me when he was alive. And I was like, wow, like, one, you kept it. Amazing, right? You didn't have to, but you did. And it was in a CD, because, we don't have CDs no more. So we had CDs. And he kept it. And I was like, wow, like, that's what I sound like.
That's a good memory, That's good.
Good memory,
yeah.
So to go back to say, like, now I'm living that dream, communicating effectively, as a legislator, it's just, it's God's gift. So
what is the long term for you? Now you're a junior, you become a senior. What happens after that?
You know what? It's in God's hands, as I say, God's hands.
But you gotta have a slight understanding, right?
What I'll tell you is, I have 4 years left of my tenure as a legislator, and I plan to go all the way to the end, all the way to the end zone. 4 years, and my main goal right now is to have one of the best bodies of work as a legislator Central Ohio has seen. I'm on my way to do that. I've done some monumental things. It's not just road naming bills or license plates, even though I do pass those too. They're real substantive policy that changes people's lived experiences in this state. And as long as I am focused on that, anything's possible for me. Anything. Because I can show proof to concept that whatever the electorate, which are the people, put me in, I'm going to do their job. I'm going to do my job on their behalf. Mm-hmm. So 4 years, I want to be one of the best legislators known in this city, in this region, in this state. But I'll tell you, it comes with a sacrifice.
It does.
And, I've been doing this work since 22, right? Since I was age of 22, not the year 22, but the age of 22. And I'm ready for family, personal life, right? I'm ready to be able to share in this experience with someone and kind of really do, have a family. Yeah. And so, and I share that with other elected. So it's not something that's secret. It's just like, when you go from 22 to 36, so for basically 14 years, nonstop, hitting the pavement, doing everything you can to get to here. And then you get there and you look around and you're like, wait, I gotta, I had to make some tough choices about my family life, right? In order to maintain the type of excellence that I have now. And I'm also okay with focusing on my family and building one and growing one and sharing in the work that I've been able to, and the legacy I've been able to build, right, for myself and for the state. And so that's kind of where my mind is. Like, it's in multiple places. One, becoming and being the best legislator I can be, and then focusing intentionally on developing things that I kind of put on the table for later. Mm-hmm. One of which is developing a family and building a family with someone. So that's where my mind is. It's a vulnerable moment for folks who are watching and listening. And so it's but it's something that I'm really thinking about. And now, the sky's the limit, right? I would love to be a congressperson one day. I would love to, maybe be a senator one day. Maybe I would love to run statewide one day. I mean, all of these things are options. It's just a matter of what's my body of work, right? Like, what am I telling people that I'm worthy of their vote to be in these positions? What am I telling people? And so I'd rather show them. Right. And I've showed them not just in my freshman term, not just my junior term, but I'm going to show them every step of the way next GA to say, whatever I decide to do, you best believe you got a doggone good person who will be in a position working on their behalf.
Absolutely. And I'm going to add to the family thing. It's having somebody to share with, especially kids to share with, you will cherish more.
I agree. I don't have any kids, right? Yeah. And, I would love to have kids one day. And so it's just, so these are the things that I'm thinking about, right? And it's easy for me to just tell you I want to run for this and that. And no, I want a family. So that's a different conversation, different answer, right? Absolutely. And so that is what I want to have. That's what I want. And so, and I'm going to do my thing to make sure that I build a happy life in that way.
And I know now you're a good communicator. Mm-hmm. Have you ever thought about once in a year giving just a speech?
Yeah, I give speeches all the time.
Not on an event when they invite you, just a speech that from you, just giving it
out to people. Yeah, I mean, so this new initiative that we're starting with called the Love Letter to Ohio is going to be something different that we will do. Every GA and every time you get reelected, you should not rebrand, but you should just kind of try some new things. And I like to show that in what I wear. I wear African suits, from Ghana. I wear a wooden bow tie. I share with what I wear, but also my strategy. And so that's forthcoming. It's going to be more of I really want to educate people in what I do. Because I think part of the apathy from voters is when they look at a ballot and they look at county prosecutor, state representative, congressperson, heck, even president, municipal court judge, juvenile court judge, they don't know what these positions are. And so you sometimes just pick whatever. Whatever. I saw his name multiple times, bam, right? You're not researching all the time. There are people who do. I don't throw no shade out there like everybody does this, but there are people who don't really understand what they're voting for.
People that are listening to this podcast will most likely have a will do.
Right. And so for me, I like this new journey, going into this junior term in office, I want to do everything possible to not unmask, not the right word, but unpack what I do and how it connects with the other systems of government, so they have a deeper understanding of how it all is interconnected.
Yeah.
So yes, at some point I would love to, and I will.
Think about it, man. You're a good communicator.
Thank you.
You get a lot of what you can break a complex issue into regular conversation.
Thank you.
And
That
people
means a
can
lot.
just understand that. So
Thank you.
I think just giving it like 30 minutes worth of like even like through your social media. I think,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that could.
I'm gonna commend you for it. I'm gonna say like Abdul told me to do this, so I'm gonna do
it. Dude, I want to say thank you so much for your time,
thank
man.
you,
I
Abdul. I
appreciate it
appreciate
for coming through, and this has just been such a delightful conversation and kind of sort of give me a peek to, one of the great minds that are running the State House.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Well, I'm looking forward to being back. Appreciate you.
Man, I appreciate it. We'll leave it at that.